I'm a 33-year-old office worker. My husband, Tony, is 5 years older. We've been married for 7 years. Currently, due to certain circumstances, I live with my mother. Now you might be wondering, how did she end up in this situation? Well, let's go back a few years. Tony and I built a house when he had just switched jobs. At the time, we didn't have much in the way of savings or income. Tony's previous job at a major corporation was plagued by insidious harassment from his boss, leading to sleepless nights. A few months later, he became unable to go to work. After consulting a psychiatrist, he took a leave of absence for about 3 months. With no signs of recovery, he ultimately resigned. Living solely on my salary, Tony, unemployed for 2 months, began to regain his energy. He started eating well, sleeping again, and his psychiatrist was pleased with his speedy recovery. My positive and beloved Tony was back. From there, he vigorously searched for a job. Despite his experience being an advantage, finding a new job wasn't easy due to the reason for his resignation being mental health. During this challenging time, we found a small company that needed him. Although his salary was about 2/3 of what he used to earn, seeing his eyes shine as he said, "It's way better than being jobless. Let's do this," made me happy. Furthermore, it was in the field that he desired. We wanted to have children, but it was clear that life would become difficult if I stopped working. As a result, and because I loved my job, we gave up on having children. At this point, a cloud overshadowed our peaceful life. My mother, Karen, became paralyzed due to a traffic accident, living in a wheelchair. With our family home being old and far from wheelchair-friendly, Tony suggested, "I'm worried. Let's live together." Surprised but appreciative of this unexpected kindness from Tony, we decided to apply for a mortgage. Despite challenges due to the short length of Tony's current employment, our determination and unbreakable spirit led us to persist. Trying out a 5th mortgage company, it was indeed difficult to get Tony's loan approved. However, the loan officer proposed various options, and one of these proposals led to a successful loan approval. We finally decided to buy our own home, fulfilling my dream of living in a house filled with the scent of wood, thick exposed wooden beams on the ceiling, customized storage spaces, a kitchen adjusted to my short stature, and a spacious flooring made of cypress. Of course, it is a barrier-free single-story house, perfect for comfortable living in a wheelchair. Our painstakingly designed dream home was finished, featuring a large yard where my mother, who had become reluctant to go out, could now enjoy sunbathing. However, there was one dissatisfaction. The land on which we built was given to us by Tony's grandfather. Tony's family wasn't particularly rich, but his grandfather adored him. Tony received the largest plot of land as per his grandfather's wishes. It felt like winning the lottery, but there was a major catch. The land was just a 5-minute walk from Tony's family home. When we told them that my mother would be moving in with us, Tony's sister laughed. "Why is your mother moving in too? How shameless is your family?" Tony's mother snidely remarked, "Isn't it awful for my son to be dragged into caring for the elderly? Aren't you some kind of curse?" Even during these times, Tony defended my mother and me, saying, "It's the land that Grandpa gave me. There's no reason for anyone to complain." Tony's mother and sister are quite malicious, almost world-class. I think it's a miracle that such a kind person like Tony was raised in that family. Emotion told me that she had a severe stomachache and needed to go to the hospital immediately. Panicking, I rushed home to find my mother in obvious pain. Tony and I quickly took her to the hospital, where the doctors diagnosed her with appendicitis. Surgery was necessary, and the situation became tense. As I sat anxiously in the waiting room, Tony reassured me and stayed by my side. Thankfully, the surgery was successful, and my mother began her recovery. During her hospital stay, Tony and I juggled work responsibilities and took turns caring for her. It was a challenging time, but Tony's unwavering support made it more bearable. As my mother regained her strength, she expressed gratitude for having Tony in her life. Despite the initial tensions with his family, Tony proved to be a compassionate and caring son-in-law. He visited my mother regularly, bringing her favorite snacks and engaging in heartfelt conversations. This challenging period brought our small family even closer together. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law, witnessing Tony's genuine care, started to soften their attitude. They occasionally visited the hospital, albeit with some hesitation. Over time, they began to acknowledge the positive changes in our lives. Once my mother was discharged, we returned home with a renewed sense of gratitude. The neighbors, aware of the recent events, offered their support and kind words. The incident served as a turning point, breaking down some of the barriers that existed between us and Tony's family. In the midst of adversity, we discovered the strength of our bond and the resilience of our family. My mother's health scare reminded us of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing the moments we have together. As we settled back into our routine, the echoes of the incident lingered, but we faced the future with newfound unity and optimism. Life in our dream home continued, marked by love, understanding, and the shared hope for a brighter tomorrow. Hearing this shocking revelation, I needed to verify the situation and salvage whatever I could. The company confirmed that indeed, they had picked up our belongings earlier that day. I was infuriated, but had to maintain composure. As I hung up, my sister-in-law continued her audacious explanation. This house is ours now. We've already drawn up the paperwork, and the resale money covered the legal fees. You're no longer welcome here, so pack your bags and leave. I couldn't believe the audacity and cruelty of their actions. My mind was racing, and I felt a surge of anger. How could they exploit such a vulnerable moment in our lives? I gathered my strength and said, "This is our home. You have no right to do this." What about decency and respect, especially after Tony's passing? My sister-in-law just smirked, clearly reveling in our distress. Decency and respect? Your husband's gone. What's the point of clinging to this place? Besides, you couldn't afford it anyway. We're doing you a favor. My mother, finding her voice, exclaimed, "This is heartless." How can you be so heartless? Ignoring our protests, they continued to unpack their belongings and acted as if they owned the place. It was a surreal and agonizing moment. Frustrated and helpless, my mother and I retreated to the backyard to gather our thoughts. We were determined not to let this heartless act break us further. We decided to seek legal advice and explore our options to reclaim what was rightfully ours. As we left our once happy home, now invaded by heartless relatives, I couldn't help but feel a mix of grief, anger, and determination. Tony's passing had already left a void in our lives, and now this callous act threatened to erase the memories we had created together. Little did my sister-in-law and her husband know that they had just ignited a fierce determination within us. We would fight to reclaim our home and preserve the legacy Tony had left behind. The battle for justice had just begun, and we were not about to let them trample over the love and life we had built within those walls. In the midst of chaos and heartbreak, a glimmer of justice emerged. After explaining the situation, the resale company agreed to treat our items as stolen and return them. Despite my newfound desire to distance myself from Tony's family, the memories of our shared home pulled me in conflicting directions. During this emotional struggle, my mother, understanding my internal turmoil, whispered, "What do you think Tony would say if he were here now?" It struck a chord. Tony often emphasized the importance of spending time with those who truly understood us and advised against dealing with those who wouldn't get it. Clear as day, I realized he had been talking about his mother and sister. With this clarity, I impulsively signed a lease for an accessible apartment and moved our belongings there. In exchange for leaving the house, I made my mother and sister-in-law promise to cut ties with us. A new chapter began with just my mother and me, free from the interference of Tony's family. Unexpectedly, it appeared that Tony had taken extensive life insurance policies. As he often joked, "When I die, you guys will be rich." True to his word, he left us enough money to be comfortable for the rest of our lives. Having purchased the house under my name, I ensured financial security for us. The original contract stipulated that the house would be auctioned off if the mortgage wasn't paid for 3 months. In the hustle of life, 3 months passed in a flash, and the house was sold without major trouble. As we planned to find a new home with Tony's legacy, a surprising turn of events unfolded. Linda and Jessica, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, faced homelessness after selling their own house and losing their primary source of income. When they pleaded for money and reconciliation, I firmly declined. The tables had turned, and it seemed karma had caught up with them. In truth, a lawyer had been involved for the past 3 months, pushing for the auction of the house. With the sale completed, our family found respite. We decided on a condominium for our new home, prioritizing security and minimal noise disturbance. In this new beginning, I recall Tony's words about creating a space where his mother could enjoy her hobby of reading in the garden. I chose a luxurious condominium with a large balcony, reminiscent of the spacious courtyard he had envisioned. The story took a surprising twist as rumors spread about my estranged in-laws. Left homeless and living in public housing, their troubled behavior created disturbances in the community. From loud arguments to disruptive activities, they faced challenges that reflected the consequences of their actions. Amidst the contrast between their tumultuous lives and our peaceful existence, I realized the importance of living without causing trouble for others. With Tony watching over us, my commitment is to lead a life not just for myself, but also in his memory. The past is behind us, and I look forward to a future filled with peace, tranquility, and the cherished memories of a life well lived.